And what are you thinking, Sister Bednar?
Oh, hey, sorry to interrupt there, Susan. This is D-Bays with the Mormon News Roundup. Yes, that's talent on loan from Kolob. We're going to check out this interview with Susan and David Bednar. David is currently a Mormon apostle and a future generational prophet for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Susan's going to reflect on a deeply personal moment where her faith and obedience to the church were tested. Here she's going to reflect on that time when she sat with Gordon Hinckley, who was then the church president, who was calling David into the apostleship. And as we'll see, it wasn't just his life that changed forever, but hers as well. And the only difference is that she had absolutely no say in the matter.
Well, he said the first words out of my mouth when he told me were, "I don't think I can do this."
Yeah, no kidding. She's just been sentenced to a lifetime of unpaid church service, expected to follow her husband around the world, smiling through endless state conferences and leadership meetings for the rest of her days. But let's see if anyone thought to consult her before making this decision that would shape every aspect of her life. Spoiler alert, they didn't.
I really did feel that way, and I'm sorry I felt that way because the Lord's blessed me throughout my life to be able to do hard things and things that I didn't think I could do, so.
Of course she apologizes, because in Mormonism, any hesitation without completely sacrificing your autonomy is framed as a personal failing. God has allegedly blessed her, which of course she can't actually prove. So naturally, she owes the rest of her life to Mormon Incorporated. And let's be real, David won't be released from this calling until he draws his last breath. And the sick fact of the matter is, neither will she. But somehow, without even having the option of declining, she still feels the need to apologize for a very human reaction.
It was mostly a lack of faith, I think, in myself. Plus, when you start to think about the longevity of this calling, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's for the rest of her life. And anytime a Latter-day Saint has a valid reason for not wanting to give the church more time, money, or labor, it's never because the church is asking too much. It's always framed as a personal defect. The problem can never be the institution. The problem is always you. You're expected to obey without hesitation. And if you have any qualms whatsoever, well, it's your fault for not having enough faith. This is the very definition of a high-demand religion.
Did you then call your sons, or did you have to wait?
You go ahead and tell this.
Notice how the interviewer was asking Susan, but David feels the need to jump in to give her permission to continue. Because in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even when a woman is the one who's being addressed, she's still expected to defer to her priesthood-enabled husband. Susan isn't really even allowed to decide when she will speak. She has to look to David for that. Just a textbook example of Mormon patriarchy in action.
President Hinckley said, "You can't tell anyone." And
Except my wife.
And I said, "Surely we can tell our sons." One lived in North Carolina at the time, another one in Austin, Texas. Our youngest son was a student at BYU, and I said, "Surely we can tell our sons." And he said, "No."
Imagine this, you're a grown woman, but you're expected to ask an 80-year-old man that you've never even met for permission to inform her own children about a decision that would drastically affect her life? But nope, Gordon Hinckley said no, and that's that. Also, on a fun little side note, while Susan is expected to quietly accept this lifelong unpaid labor, their son at BYU is probably enjoying tuition-free education, courtesy of the many perks of being a general authorities kid. Nepotism in the Lord's University is alive and well.
Then I waited a few more minutes and I said, "Our sons won't tell anyone. This is the most important day of your whole life."
Let's pause here for a moment. Susan's been alive at this point for decades. She's gotten married, given birth, raised a family, and countless other accomplishments. But the most important day of her life isn't any of those things. It's when her husband gets a job promotion at work. Remember, David was already a general authority at this time. That says everything you need to know about how much value and power that she holds in this institution. Her very existence is secondary to her husband's career in the church. And she's expected to see it that way too.
"Surely we can tell them." And he said no again, and I waited. I asked him one more time, and he looked at me and he said, "Martin." And you know how Joseph Smith begged to show the manuscript to Martin Harris, and it was lost. And he just said the word Martin, and I caught on really fast. And I thought, I don't want to push this any farther.
For a quick context, Martin Harris was one of the original backers of the Book of Mormon. And he was also one of the initial scribes and begged Joseph Smith to take 116 pages of the Book of Lehi to show his wife and members of his community. After Martin asked Joseph Smith a couple of times, Joseph finally relented, but unfortunately that manuscript eventually got lost. Now back to Susan. She was just trying to involve her family in a life-altering decision. But Gordon Hinckley doesn't care what she wants, does he? In fact, absolutely no one cares what she wants. She's expected to keep sweet, pray, and obey. And what's worse is that David thinks this entire situation is hilarious. His wife is literally being rebuked by the prophet, essentially being told that she's a doubter, and he finds that amusing. And why is that? Well, it's because David knows his role and the importance of submitting to capricious authority without question. Gordon Hinckley is the prophet. And when the prophet speaks, the thinking has been done. When the prophet speaks, the debate is over. And Susan, well, she's just along for the ride, expected to keep a sweet smile on her face and just say thank you. And as we wrap things up, it's important to note that throughout this interview, Susan is constantly looking to David for cues about whether she should actually speak, whether she should continue her train of thought, and about whether she's saying the right thing. This is a perfect microcosm of Mormon gender roles. The men lead and the women follow. Susan's thoughts, feelings, and desires, well, they're always secondary. Like I said, doctrine over self. And let's be real, Susan's feelings, they don't matter at all. And that, my friends, is how patriarchy survives and thrives in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I don't want to push this any farther.